funny, we had a minister, we had a COO, both using iPads, and we got Facebook using paper, so bear with me, sorry. I'll wow you with some stats to start with. The World Wide Web is 7,500 days old. Facebook is 2,500 days old. And in that time, we've managed to reach 40% of the world's internet users, right? So 800 million people today are connected on Facebook every single month. And together they form a map of human connections that reach people we know, friends and family, but also connections to the things we care about. I don't think the clicker works, actually, unfortunately. So, okay. I'm going to operate it myself. So every year, Facebook creates a memology. Are you all familiar with the memology, or have you seen what Facebook does? So we look back at the past year at trends across the site, which is quite interesting. And of the top 10 status update trends in the UK, specifically last year, 2 related to popular music. Ed Sheeran and Geci J, as you can see here. Not surprising, both artists also topped the UK radio charts. In fact, I believe Geci J was the 8th most played artist of the year across radio. But it's also exciting to see the long tail of music alive on Facebook. So of the top 10 fastest growing music pages, old favorites such as Bob Marley ranks 2nd, Metallica 8th, yeah, he's a Metallica fan over there, and Green Day 9th. So we know that people on Facebook are listening to the radio while talking about artists they love, and clearly they're talking about a very wide spectrum of music, which means the opportunity for online music services such as RDO and Deezer, and digital radio like Slacker, and of course, new entrants like traditional radio are massive. Okay, thanks. Next slide. Oh, yeah, next slide. So how many times have we seen a picture like this in a presentation like this that makes us feel nostalgic, or maybe for some of us in the room, probably myself excluded, it even reminds us of childhood memories? I don't think you need me to tell you that radio has always been extremely social. In fact, for many families, it might have been actually the one time in the day that they actually came together to listen to the news or listen to a radio program that they like. But over time, something happened. We're all holding it. It's the personal device, and it's not going anywhere, right? We have more and more personal devices. I'd venture to say that probably everybody in this room has more than one personal device, multiple phones, iPads, etc. Next slide. So listening became less social, unfortunately. But in that time, our feelings about radio haven't changed. So this past summer, Britons were polled about the media they were consuming and how they felt in terms of their mood and energy levels while experiencing the media. Next slide, please. And for those of you who saw the results of the study, Media and the Mood of the Nation, you would have been pleased to see that radio came out on top, of course, in comparison to television, etc. Respondents recorded a 100% lift in happiness and a 300% boost in energy levels when listening to a radio program. And it intrigued me to read that the Radio Advertising Bureau's very own Mark Barber said, and I quote, that people use radio as a lifestyle support system and to make themselves feel better about their lives. This is especially interesting because it's not so dissimilar to how we see many people using Facebook. I've come across so many amazing stories about just everyday Facebook users. And in one case, a seriously ill patient who used Facebook as a refuge because no matter what time of the day, no matter what day of the week, you can always find a friend who's on. These friends are here for us in good times and in bad times, for the big things, like an illness, of course, but also for the everyday little things, such as advice and recommendations. Next slide, please. The vast majority of people, not surprisingly, trust friends more than critics for music recommendations. I mean, of course, we grew up, sharing mixtapes with our friends and, being influenced by their musical tastes. And who do you ask for advice for, gigs and festivals and what to do and where to go in terms of, music activities? The list goes on, right? If it's a film, do you want a recommendation from a stranger or a friend? Travel, restaurants, it's all the same. Everything from cameras to cars, we seek our friends. We all know who's the foodie in our friend group, who's the tech geek. Those are the people that we go to. And since all of our friends are on Facebook, we spend a disproportionate time there, right? I mean, people are spending almost 7 hours a month on average on Facebook. And in that time, they upload photos, they upload videos, they play games, they update their status, they send messages. The list goes on. And people have always been listening to music while on Facebook, but it was cumbersome to share what I was listening to, unless maybe you wrote it in a status update, or maybe you were on the Absolute Radio website and you pressed the like button. But short of that, the music I listened to wasn't penetrating. So following our F8 conference last year in September, we started to see people sharing what they're listening to via social music apps. Now I see what my friends are listening to in real time, and I can actively join them by simply clicking play from the ticker, the news feed, or a timeline. Next slide, please. So on Facebook, you get personal but connected. To me, that's the holy grail, right? Personal and identity is the foundation of what makes Facebook what it is today. We are our real selves on Facebook, and because of that, so many amazing experiences have been created off the back of that. But for businesses and brands and music services, they're able to tap into that. Why? Because we're connected all the time. So personal but connected is extremely powerful. So in this slide, if you can see, it's a little bit fuzzy, but these are all folks in my network that are listening to music outlined in red. So while Elka, my colleague, might have her headphones on clear across the room, I can actually tune in to what she's listening to in real time, and in an instant, we're listening together. So there are other ways that people are communicating to listeners directly, right? So now I can subscribe to Christian O'Connell's updates directly from the Absolute Radio site. You can see here there's a little subscribe button, kind of looks like the like button. Basically what that's allowing me to do is subscribe to Christian O'Connell's public updates. So he has one profile on Facebook because he's one individual. So he might have a page for his personality or for his, representing kind of his job with Absolute Radio, but he has one personal profile. But I can now subscribe to that personal profile and get his public updates, and he can keep his private updates available just for his friends and his family. But not only is this empowering presenters and public figures and celebrities to build fan loyalty, and in this case listener loyalty, but it opens up completely new distribution channels. Personal communications rank extremely high in the newsfeed, so that might just sound quite obvious what I just said, but people are always asking us at Facebook, how can I get more distribution? We know that when we do a post, not all of our friends see it. That's impossible. The newsfeed is only so big, right? And you have so many friends, we can't show everything. But what's clever about the newsfeed is that it looks at something called a coefficient score, and it decides if it's relevant and if it should shoot the message higher up in your newsfeed. And if it is, then more people are likely to see it. And personal communication, so a direct message to a friend, or taking the time to actually write a status update, triggers kind of quite strong signals that that's important for its intended recipients. And I think, just to show quickly what Christian O'Connell's timeline looks like. Next slide, please. How many of you have actually turned on your timeline yet? A few people. It's coming. But so Christian O'Connell has his timeline turned on. This is what it looks like. And just on the next slide, you can see some of the kind of traction he's getting with his posts. It's a little bit hard to read, but just last night I was having a look at his timeline, And he posed a question to the listeners. He said, we're looking for some new ideas about such and such, and use this space to, share your ideas, and I'll read it out, the best ones, on the radio tomorrow, and maybe even send you a CD from my collection at home. And in 2 hours, he had 121 comments. I mean, in terms of research, I think that's kind of a gold mine, right? And I read some of them. Yeah, some of them are pretty bad. Some of them are pretty good. And that's how he's, using his kind of subscribe feature to actually source content for the show while engaging the audience. Fantastically easy. So just one quick final example of kind of just a different take on how the music industry is, directly looking for ways to monetize their presence on Facebook, because we totally get that, right? I mean, David Guetta has 25 million likes. Great. What are you going to do with them? And so now he's experimenting with actually offering his tracks directly for sale via an app on Facebook using Facebook credits. So if you just click again, you can see here that a track costs 19 Facebook credits. I have 9 credits in my kind of Facebook wallet, so what this window is telling me is that I need 10 more credits in order to purchase that track. So it's early days, of course, and we don't see, a lot of kind of digital music sales happening on Facebook, but it's exciting to see people experimenting with kind of the next phase, right? Once you have this loyal fan base of 25 million, how does that translate into real business for you? Next slide, please. So I hope, I'm going to respect time and kind of wrap up, but I hope the takeaway from my talk is that certainly music has arrived on Facebook. Right now people can discover the songs their friends are listening to in a variety of places. It used to be all about kind of the newsfeed and everything centered there, but now your timeline, which formerly was your profile, is a destination. It's a place to spend time and discover my musical interests. This is my timeline. You can see the music that I'm listening to right here, and my friends are coming to this and discovering music that way. Next slide, please. And I think the radio industry has a fantastic opportunity that in some ways other parts of the music industry have kind of passed up. And I mean that in the sense that here in this country you've already collaborated. Radio has already collaborated and come together to build Radio Player, which is fantastic for the end user, right? It's easy, it's simplistic UI, and it's the music you love, and easy discoverability and playback. But what's next, right? So I leave you with the question of how can you make radio, in particular, more discoverable on Facebook in the same ways that the likes of Slacker and RDO and Deezer and Spotify have done? Radio can have a place certainly here. This is what we call the music dashboard. So this is my music dashboard, and you can see kind of top albums and top artists. Well, why can't it be top radio stations, right? Top radio shows that I'm interested in. Let's create an opportunity for discovery that exists 24/7 outside the broadcast window. That's where the big opportunity and the big win is for radio. Thank you very much.
Karla, before you go, I just wanted to ask you, do you foresee a time in the near future where, so if I'm using Facebook, The Guardian's inside there, it's sharing with my friends what article I've read in The Guardian, for example. Same with Spotify. Do you see a time in the near future when that will be the same with radio, where radio lives inside of Facebook?
I mean, the question of inside or outside is actually not something we really entertain too much. And the reason is, years ago, when we created kind of Facebook Connect, right, it enabled you to take Facebook wherever you are on the web. So whether you're building an app like The Guardian's that lives inside Facebook, or you're a service like Spotify or Radio Player, for instance, that exists off the web, it doesn't matter. If real identity is the foundation, i.e. Facebook identity, I'm able to use my Facebook credentials to log into that experience. For us, that's a big win, and it's not necessarily about inside or outside.
Because it is in America. You have iHeartRadio inside of Facebook in America. Is that something you feel isn't something you want to replicate here in Europe?
Well, I think it's really down to the partner to determine what's right for their business. So I don't think, for example, you'll really ever see a Deezer or a Spotify necessarily building an app to live inside Facebook. Their whole service, in a way, is an app. that is kind of powered by Facebook identity. And for us, it's almost that it's imperceivable, the difference between the two.
And just something very quickly that I was interested in. You talked about the trends on Facebook last year, which is information that you have. Do you ever see a time in the future where those trends will be in the public domain in a live way, like they are in something like Twitter?
Yeah, there are ways. It's not quite as simple. There are ways to kind of look at kind of public status updates. So Facebook is a little bit different. Most people keep their status updates private, right? Private to their network. But because it's such a large community of 800 million, there's still a whole host of people that don't, that prefer to have their status updates completely public. And there are ways actually to look for trends. It's just not quite as straightforward as we'd like it to be. But yes, I do think that there'll be easier ways to tap into kind of that real-time trending.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Karla Geci.
Thanks, Jeff.